Well, good Monday to you. Welcome to another episode of Monday Motions. There was a man who lived in former communist Russia. He was in a unique profession, had a unique job description. He was a tank driver. And when communism fell apart and the whole government just kind of imploded, a lot of things stopped happening. But one of the challenges for just normal people was that the paychecks stopped coming because all the pay went through the government. And so this man found himself in kind of dire straits. He wasn't sure what to do, and he finally decided that he needed to go downtown to City Hall and have a conversation with some of the bureaucrats there and let them know that he had missed his paycheck and he needed it to buy some groceries. So he hopped in his tank. I don't know why he had his tank. This is a true story. This is not a joke. There's no punchline. This is a guy that had a tank. He climbed in and fired the thing up, and he drove the tank downtown. Needless to say, the townspeople were terrified. They saw this tank rolling in, and they understandably assumed he was a disgruntled government official that was gonna just get some revenge. Maybe he was gonna blow up City Hall. Maybe he was gonna just drive the tank into some buildings. They didn't know, but they were terrified, and so they surrounded the tank once he had kind of screeched to a halt in front of his destination at City Hall, and they were just kind of like standing back until he came out of the tank, and they quickly got his attention. They said, "Sir, we're sorry. We don't want to offend you. We just want to know, do you intend to blow up City Hall?" I mean, it's reasonable, right? If you had been in that city, in that situation, would you have maybe made the same assumption? I probably would have. It would be understandable for us to make that assumption that the man rolling up in the tank was looking for a fight. But he shocked all of them when he said, no, emphatically, no, I'm not going to blow anything up. I'm not even mad. I just didn't have money for a taxi. He brought a tank to a conversation. The people would have been understandably scared, but they were wrong about their assumption. And the man didn't really consider what it was going to look like rolling up to City Hall in a tank, or else he wouldn't have been so shocked when the people were terrified of him, right? But have you ever been in a situation like that? There's a conversation you need to have with somebody, and it's probably a little more of a touchy situation, whether it's with a partner, a family member, someone at work, coworker, boss, someone at church maybe, a neighbor whose dog keeps pooping in your front yard. I don't know, right? But there's that conversation that needs to happen, and maybe you found yourself confronted with something that was so frustrating that you brought your tank to the conversation. You came rolling in like a tank, and it did not go well. I'm sure you've been on the receiving end of that when someone just unloads their cannons on you for, you think, no reason. Like, where is this coming from? I had no idea. They come rolling up to the conversation in a tank, and it doesn't go well. The psychologist and researcher Dr. John Gottman, who is fantastic. If you haven't read any of his work, it's amazing. Don't wait for your marriage to be terrible until you read this stuff. Read it when your marriage is good, and you can even do better. But his research is all focused around the marriage relationships, and he says this. He says 94% of conversations end in the way that they were started. That means when I bring a tank to a conversation, it's going to end like a battle because the person's going to assume I'm there for a fight. And if someone comes at me with a tank in a conversation, it's probably not going to end well because I'm probably going to be defensive and angry, assuming they're there to blow me up, right? That's why I love the verse in the Bible. It says that God requires from us three things: to do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly. And for me, that really connects with this whole idea, because the reality is when I find myself frustrated and needing to share some maybe sensitive information that might be uncomfortable to somebody else, it's easy for me to come in with like guns blazing, right? Not realizing, not really thinking about how that's going to set the other person off. But the Bible says, do justly, do what's right. Take responsibility for your own voice. Me, take responsibility for my own voice, my own words, and consider the impact that 94% of this conversation that I'm going to have is going to go the way that I started. So do justly, take a deep breath, and start in a way that's going to be productive. But I love that the verse also says, love mercy. That when somebody else comes at you with a tank, that maybe we don't assume offense. that maybe even if offense is intended, that we don't accept offense and we offer to listen, to be merciful. Even though they want to start it with the tank, we're not going to bring our tank to the fight. So do justly, do what's right. Don't bring your tank to a conversation when you don't need to. Love mercy. Listen even if someone else has brought their tank. It doesn't discount their feelings. They still have valid concerns and complaints. Hear them out, right? But the thing is this. So John Gottman, this psychologist, says there's this thing called a soft startup. He says basically if we want to have a conversation that's going to be 94% likely to go well, right? Doesn't mean it's always going to go well. There's still people that are defensive. They still have their own response, their own responsibility. But 94% of the time, if we start it in a way that's productive, he says that it's going to end productively. So it's a thing called a soft startup, and I want to teach you this. If you don't know, if you do know, it's a good reminder. There are 5 different things. Number 1, complain, don't blame. Basically what this means is that if you have a valid concern, complain about it. You know, your partner offered to fill up the car with gas on the way home from work and they didn't. They promised they would, and now you're having to be late to your meeting because you have to stop and get gas. Complain about that, but don't blame. Right? There's a big difference here, and when you're on the receiving end of it, we feel that difference, don't we? To complain is to just say, you know what, you promised you'd do that, and now I find myself in a really frustrating circumstance. Can we talk about that? Rather than, why do you always fail? Why do you never do what you say? Oh, come on, right? So first of all, just name the complaint. Don't turn it into a blame of the person in pulling their whole identity into this thing. Oh, they never listen, right? Number 2, use I statements rather than you. I felt disrespected when you showed up with the car not filled with gas. I felt like you didn't, I felt disrespected, right? Rather than you never listen to me, you never do what you say, right? I'm owning it about what I'm feeling, my hurts, my complaint. Number 3, describe, don't evaluate, right? You said you would stop for gas and then you didn't. What happened? Rather than, I think you probably just didn't really care enough. I mean, that might be true, but let the person you're talking to have the respect to state their own reasons. So describe what happened. Don't evaluate it yet. And number 4, be polite and appreciative. There's never an excuse to be unkind. We feel frustrated, we feel unheard, we feel disrespected, and yet when we're willing to step like that one line further and say, I'm still going to be polite, I'm still going to say, I appreciate these things you do for me, it just changes the way the conversation go. And finally, number 5, Dr. Gottman says, don't store up. And what he means by that is, if you're frustrated that your partner didn't fill up the gas tank on the way home, say it. Don't wait. Don't let it just build up and push it down to where it's going to suddenly come out with, you said this thing months and months and it's never happened over and over and over, right? It's just like hurricane, rather than saying, hey, listen, this thing just happened. I was hurt. I felt this way. Can we talk about that? And it doesn't turn into apocalyptic issue because you just deal with it. Don't wait. Don't store it up. Deal with it in that moment. So the 5 things: complain, don't blame. Number 2, I statements instead of you statements. Describe, don't evaluate. 4, be polite, be appreciative. And then number 5, finally, is just start, just do it. Have the conversation. The Bible promises that a soft answer turns away wrath. And though that doesn't always happen exactly how we want it, it never hurts to do the best that we can, even when someone else isn't. And research bears it out now. It validates what the Bible said 94% of the time. If we're willing to kind of take a deep breath, step back, and approach this in a way with humility, with justness, that we're going to make sure we're behaving rightly in our conversation. We're not bringing our tank. And we're going to be gracious when that person maybe brings their tank, and still try to hear what they're saying, what's going on, what are they frustrated about. Then the Bible promises things go better. Science now validates that things go better. So on this Monday, as you start this week, whether you find yourself in awkward conversations with family or colleagues, friends, neighbors, may you leave your tank at home and use a soft startup. And if someone else brings their tank, may you operate out of grace and allow them to be heard, even if they maybe didn't start up in the best way possible. A soft answer turns away wrath, and a tank never helps, so leave it at home.